Hello, SGD, Sacred Geometry Decoded, Science of the Symbols, Part 30. And so I'll just do a recap, Part 29. So we were looking at Zoroaster, the Alchemist, and it has his referenced in Clavis Artis. So this book, around about the year 1600, was published, but it's credited to 1236 and said to be based on the work of Zoroaster. And so, School of Athens, he's one of the famed alchemist, philosopher's stone, along with Cleopatra, the alchemist, Maria, the Jewess. Famous credited with the pelican flask, which is an important symbol. So in Kirsch has been the Jesuits, especially, and their involvement, but you'll find there in church symbolism and Rosicrucian Freemasons, and for instance, it can be argued about, but what they said was that early Queen Elizabeth I was very, absolutely she was. I'm in no doubt about it. The people she was surrounded with, Gunther, Dee, these guys were theosophists, Rosicrucians before it became what it is now. They were the old school types. They were Hermeticists by definition, professors of geometry. They were into their metrology, they were into astronomy, measure, survey, Hermes, god of weights and measures. They were just bound in it. It's just all. Now, it's also an important part of Freemasonry still now, the craft as it's called, which has these alchemical connections and these symbols that persist. Now, their origins can be, well, okay, I won't go into the. A symbol can mean whatever you choose it to mean, but I want to stay with the hard facts, if you want to put it that way. Back to Clavis Artis, this particular Hermetic book. Link to this will be in the description. There's a couple versions, so I'll try to remember to put a couple links in there. But Zoroaster being mentioned in there. Now, these drawings are scientific textbooks, illustrations, diagrams prior to the way we read them now. And I've been showing that, for instance, this from Clavis Artis, Corpus Spiritus Animus. Okay, anyway, I showed that the previous one. Corpus Anima Spiritus, Salt, Sulphur and Mercury. We see this dragon, the three-headed fire-breathing dragon. One with the sulphur has the crown, which is an important feature. And so Basil Valentine. So when you hear Rebis, azoth, philosopher's stone, at least in the West European tradition, it all funnels back to Basil Valentine. And I must say it has been very much diluted, if not perverted, in some cases. Now, Heinrich Kunraf, Animus Spiritus Corpus, the famous alchemist, he studied the emerald tablet of Hermes Trismegistus, just like Isaac Newton did. We'll come to him in another Heinrich Kunraf picture, Azoth, Rebis, the alchemical wedding of gold and silver, sun and moon. For Hermaphrodite is an alchemical symbol, not a gender thing. It's now, even, okay, Heinrich Kunraf, so now, salt, sulphur, and mercury. Basil Valentine, we saw those salt, sulphur, and salt, mercury, sulphur, mercury, salt, sulphur. And even this, the milk from the breast is an important one, but we'll come to that in the future. But Basil Valentine, basically, at least in European tradition, the rock star granddaddy of alchemy, probably many different people have written under that name. But he's famous in chemistry for the three principles, salt, sulphur, and mercury, and a big step forward in scientific knowledge. Now, he's often said to have been, some people suspect he was Johann Tolder, the salt manufacturer, on a large-scale manufacture, not these. Anyway, sulphur and mercury. Now, sulphur and mercury are elements. Salt, potassium chloride, table salt is a substance. But you can pause and read that. I've gone for it was the last episode. But he's starting to classify different elements and substances, leading towards the periodic table, as we know. Mendeleev basically, really unlocked one of the big keys, that periodic table you've seen in your science class. Genius, absolute genius what that was, and it's a brilliant. Now, various people are given credit for it, but hydrochloric acid, ammonia, and sulfuric acid basically all go back, at least accepted, to Basil Valentine. They probably go back much further, but with salt, sulfuric acid, and mercury has the with salt and sulfuric acid you get hydrochloric acid. In all, military, industrial, coin making. Now I think okay, so for instance, I forget his pen name, one of the big alchemists of the time was Bauer. The Bauer family was coin makers, coinage, alchemy, and they went on to become the Rothschilds family. So you had the Bauer and the Schiff family, the Rothschilds. Bauer's become the Rothschild or Red Shield, and the Schiff become the Green Shield family. So this is the power and the way that alchemy is really, really, really important in economy, military, colonial era, all of that. It's high technology of the time, and just like the secret military industrial complex, that's what was happening back then. Spy networks, all of that it goes. But okay, salt, sulphur, and mercury. This is where we left off. Now I'm going to bring in. This is from the secret symbols of the Rosicrucians. The link to this will be in the description, but just as an example, I'll also put this link. This is the Crowning of Nature, an anonymous book. 7 Seals. Now it's a alchemical recipe book. That's what it is. Clavis Artis as well. I'll put that link in there. Maybe it'll take a sec. But the secret symbols of the Rosicrucians, 1785, are very important. Basically, probably the last of the great Hermetic alchemical texts before the new schools come in and the Royal Society and chemistry. Alchemy overnight become chemistry, even though chemistry was still, everyone calls alchemy a pseudoscience, but early chemists were, they didn't have the periodic table. They believed in phlogiston theory. So that's, again, that's a very arbitrary, unfair description of what's happening between alchemy and chemistry. But the Rosicrucians, they're like Masons, Oddfellows, these other groups, but this is from their script. And what's happening here? Salt, sulphur, and mercury. Salt, sulphur, and mercury. Sulphur, mercury, salt. Sulphur, mercury, salt, and we see it referenced here again. This is the importance of Basil Valentine, hydrochloric sulfuric acid. Like we take it, you just go down to your, suppliers and you just pick it off. It was different back then, and it was also, well, you didn't want your competitors to have that, or if they did have it, you wanted to do them in the most expensive, ineffectual way. And so salt, sulphur, and mercury. Now, also worth mentioning, what we have is alba and rubia, now, or the white and the red. Now this is important. Again, it might just be some quirky symbol, but this is actually, the white queen and the red queen and the black flask. The marriage is happening there in the black flask, and that's putrefaction. Now what's going on is Rebis. Now again, Rebis, azoth, really some, anyway, but the descriptions of Rebis and azoth go back again to Basil Valentine and these early, even unknown alchemists, but Basil Valentine, and they describe putrefaction and the alchemical wedding, essentially the divine hermaphrodite, the reconciliation of spirit and matter, both male and female qualities in a single body. Not necessarily literal, but it's a chemical recipe. The sun and the moon as male and female halves, the golden sun and the silvery moon, just as the red queen and the white queen are similarly associated. I will get to this more, but this picture is again describing Rebis, this important sequence in the Philosopher's Stone. So this is another early 1615 Stefan Mikkelspacher alchemical illustration, and so focus on that part. What do we have? 7 steps: tincture, coagulation, distillation, putrefaction, solution, sublimation, calcination. These are still in basic operations processes in a chemist's lab still now. And so putrefaction, putrefactio, that's what's happened. Now putrefaction is a process on which you get chemicals to react with one another. It's also known as blackening or fermentation, or nigredo, blackening. Now, fermentation, putrefaction, you putrefy grapes to make wine. J.D. Milius, again, describing so this image, all sorts of things, but it's describing a chemical process. It's sun and moon also to be seen in there. It's standard. blackening or putrefaction, like a putrefying body, is like another that's what it is. It's essentially rotting, and that's what you're doing in a fermentation tank. You're bringing about the decay. And so the red and the white is pointing to the philosophers, or steps in the philosopher's stone, and putrefaction is the action to get the red and the white queen married. Okay, so also in this Rosicrucian, tincture is also a alchemical chemistry process. Okay, and for instance, now chemical laudanum, which was alcohol and opium back in the day. There's all sorts of tinctures, but these are probably the most famous. Is medical cannabis tincture. So that medical, you put the cannabis in the alcohol, and it makes a tincture. So that's again one of these steps. What they're describing. Now we come back to Rebis. This is a Basil Valentine, azoth of the philosopher's stone, Rebis. Now you can overlay that Rebis again, dual matter, that whole silver and gold, and it connects to Mercury so strongly, but I'll get that in future episodes. So what happens if we overlay Rebis with this Mikkelspacher picture? Well, what we have is that it lines up. So we have the symbol for Saturn. Also, we have the symbol for Jupiter. So Saturn, or Kronos for Titan. Zeus, the father of the king of the Olympian gods. The thunderbolt. Crescent on the head, that's Artemis or Diana as well, the moon goddess. We see the Mercury symbol, and and what do we have? Hermes Mercury with a caduceus. And he's also holding a six-pointed star, but Hermes Mercury, the element, the planet, and the god of weights and measures, god of knowledge, god of alchemy. The sun, Apollo, gold. So the moon is Mars, or Ares, the god of war, the planet, the sun, okay, and the symbol for Venus or Aphrodite, also the planet. So they're planets, they're gods as well. But they also convert to elements, and so the sun, golden sun, gold, silver, Mercury. And we also have iron for Mars, the god of war, copper for Venus, Saturn is lead, and Jupiter is tin. So it's an alchemical, it's a science, Now, Compendium Alchemist, Johann Michael Faust, another important, same symbol, same things going on. Rebis Hermaphroditus, the hermaphrodite again, and silver and gold, the sun and the moon as female halves, as described in the Rebis. Now, if we go the double-headed eagle, another standard in masonry, in church, back to the Hittites, but the silver, the sun, the golden sun, and the silvery moon. Now, if we look what's going on here, again, this six-pointed star, and what we have is again the elements. So we have the symbol for lead or Saturn, the symbol for tin or Jupiter, the symbol for iron or Mars, silver and the moon, gold, copper, Venus, Aphrodite, and in the center the sun and Mercury. And Mercury is mercurial. It's like all these other metals, you basically have to get them in a really, really hot furnace to get them to melt. In slightly different room temperature, Mercury will go from a gas to a liquid or freezing. So Mercury is a really important, and that's why is Mercury always at the top? Why is Mercury also referred to as azoth, the primary form of transformation? We'll get to that, but it's very important, and it's based in the laws of nature. Okay, now we'll bring up Exodus 31, and there's a good reason for this. Okay, so Exodus 31, why is this important? Well, especially, 2 to 6, but I'll just begin with 1. The Lord said to Moses, "See, I have called by name Bezaleel, and the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, and I have filled him with the Spirit of God, with the ability and intelligence with knowledge of all craftsmanship, to devise artistic designs to work in gold, silver, and bronze, in cutting stones for setting, and in carving wood for work in everyday craft. So then they're basically describing how they made and all the things connected to the Ark of the Covenant. But here's just to repeat the important point: I have filled him with the Spirit of God, with the ability and intelligence, with knowledge and all craftsmanship to devise artistic designs, to work in gold, silver, and bronze, in cutting stones for setting, and in carving wood for work in everyday craft. The craft, the knowledge, the technique. So stone cutting, which again is just like way out there, some of the stuff on you, especially when people who bring up Mohs hardness scale to talk about copper and bronze. No idea. You're so way. Anyone who brings up Mohs hardness scale to talk about copper, bronze, chisels, dismiss them immediately because they don't know what the hell they're talking about. The Mohs hardness scale has to do with scratching, has nothing to do with cutting. Steel is softer, is less on Mohs hardness scale compared to diamond, yet you cut diamond with steel chisels. Mohs hardness scale, just forget about it in case you've ever heard that. It is the biggest load of bollocks, pseudoscience, nonsense going out there. But I digress. The knowledge to work with gold, silver and bronze, cutting stone, working with wood, but the knowledge to gold, silver and bronze, this is alchemy they're talking about. Now if you go back before Exodus, go to Genesis, say in the time of when they speak about Noah, we have Tubal Cain featured in the pretty cool movie recent, not so many years ago, with Aronofsky and starring what's that, our Australian fella there, forget his name, but it mentions Tubal Cain. Now who was Tubal Cain? He was essentially, in the biblical sense, he was the creator, the father of metalworking. In the Sydney Masonic Centre we have this Tubal Cain statue, again working at the forge with the hammer. And even this symbol is an important reference to Tubal Cain, and there's a play on words, the Tubal Cain, or the Tubal Cain golf classic that these particular Masons in America were organising. Now, in a similar vein, Tubal Cain was essentially the metalworking, the metallurgist. Okay, now who was his sister Nama? This is what cathedral is depicted on the. Anyway, it's back in. She's teaching the art of reading, but she's also taught weaving, as where Tubal Cain's brother Jubal taught music. So we, just like in Nuar and Fuzi, Hermes, and all these other gods of knowledge, and who passed on knowledge to there. But anyway, back to Exodus, and this will be an important feature because it connects to Rosicrucians. But firstly, working with gold and silver and bronze. Now, gold and silver, well, it's actually a little bit more complicated than that, but you basically get them straight out of the ground. They're elements. It has a lot to do with mercury, processing gold, electrum. We'll get to that in future episodes, but gold and silver, they're elements. They're like, building blocks. But bronze is not. Bronze is a reference to alchemy. You do not mine bronze. It is made. It is an alloy of copper and tin. To put simply, there's a little bit more detail into that, but copper plus tin equals bronze. Bronze is much harder than copper and tin. Copper, Venus, Aphrodite, the planet, the goddess, also represents the element copper, and the planet Jupiter, also the god. Roman god was called Jupiter, but Zeus in the Olympian Greek gods, he represents tin. It's an alloy of copper and tin. Venus and Jupiter is what bronze is. Now this is an important feature because, okay, ancient bronze chisels is epsilon axe, Egyptian axe. Now ancient Greek swords are bronze, and other cultures too, or the bronze sculptures. This is an alloy. This is alchemy. You mix this, and you have to mix it right and do it the right way to get to make. You don't want your sword to be too hard or too soft. You don't want your axe to have the same thing, or whether you're working with a chisel, you want to make it the best tool possible, and alchemy, metallurgy comes into that. Now, what is bronze? Bronze is essentially the best is 10 parts copper plus 1 part tin plus fire equals bronze. This alchemical chart: tin, Zeus or Jupiter, copper, Venus or Aphrodite, plus Ignis, fire. There we have an alchemical recipe for bronze. Now, that's not a standalone, and why I bring this up is because now we have to look at Isaac Newton. Now he was maybe many don't want to talk about it, or they'll say it in some sort of to mocking terms, but Isaac Newton was an alchemist. And we see, for instance, in this diagram, we have all the 7 symbols, just like what we have here, and which also relate to the 7 elements, and also can be related to gods. These are feminine and femina, and masculine, female and the male as well, which connects to Rebis, of course. Now, apart from working on the Philosopher's Stone, being an alchemist, and later going on to work for the Royal Mint, again, coinage, he believed ancient legends were also alchemical recipes. For instance, the net being a part in creating the Philosopher's Stone. Now, what is the net and what is this ancient legend? There's a story of Vulcan, or Hephaestus, the god of like volcanism, but in Hephaestus, the god of metalworking. In Greco-Roman tradition, found Venus, or Aphrodite, or copper, in bed with Mars, or Ares, or iron. He cast a silver net about them and secured them to the ceiling. Venus, copper, Aphrodite, Mars, Ares, now also Ignis, or Vulcan, or Hephaestus, the god of metalworking and fire connected. Now, so the legend says, cast them to the ceiling in a net, a silver net, and reconstructions of Isaac Newton's alchemical writings have shown, not sure of the exact percentage, but copper plus iron plus fire equals the net, creates this fine silvery net substance running through it, and also has looks like the night sky, which matches this description of this ancient legend. So again, with ancient legends and the gods and the elements and the planets, there's something that needs to be read in this way at the time, because again, they were not using the standard diagrams and notation that we use now. But that's an example of Isaac Newton. Now, Isaac Newton was just after the publication of The Secret Symbols of the Rosicrucians, 1785, and at the very end of what you could call the alchemical Hermetic period, because basically after that, official chemistry brought in, but also, it all went skew with at that point, and all sorts of things were attached to it. Now, okay, we've examined this drawing: the salt, sulphur, and mercury, the elements, tincture, alba and the rubia, the red and the white queen, double-headed eagle. Okay, the elements. Now, next one. Okay, okay, so this is the if you just do a search, the Rosy Cross. Well, the tetragrammaton and this other stuff we have going on in here, but you also have elemental, the elements, salt, sulphur, and mercury, being depicted in there in a more this is a newfangled one. We also have constellations. So Aquila, the eagle. So the 4 cardinal points: Aquila, the eagle, or the 4 evangelists. So you go into a church, you see the 4 evangelists, and we have the eagle, Leo the lion, that's the symbol for Leo, the constellation, Taurus, and Aquarius. The 4 horsemen, the 4 evangelists, they're also the 4 cardinal points of the great year. So there's so many levels of ancient knowledge that's been passed on here, and it really is written in symbolism. It's just written in a different form. It's a scientific text much more than it is a metaphysical. And that's you can transpose whatever meaning you want onto them, but at the fundamental, at the core of it, it's profound knowledge of what's built into nature. Okay, so this is also from Secret Symbols of the Rosicrucians, and now back to Clavis Artis, and so we saw this, mercury, sulphur, and salt, and this dragon there, which has corpus anima spiritus. And what does it have to do with this illustration? Well, okay, earlier I mentioned Tubal Cain and Exodus 31. So in this here they point out Exodus 31 2-6, Bezalel, and it's also important to note laborantum, so the laboratory, and instead of being written in the Germanic script, which is the main font, every once in a while they'll drop these words in the Latin or the more modern font, and I'll show you that in a moment. But if you have anyway, but again, mentioning the knowledge, the ability to think, to create, craftsmanship, Alchemy, gold, silver and bronze. Cutting stone, cutting wood. This is from the Nuremberg Bible showing Bezalel fashioning the Ark of the Covenant. And back to Clavis Artis. So we have this picture, but there's another version of the same one. And we have the same thing. Now the breasted dragon, okay, but Mercury, sulphur and salt once more. But what's really interesting is that both depictions show this red flower, but look at the leaves. Both times it's a trefoil. Where do we see that? Trefoil, philosopher. And mercury, sulfur and salt. This is an alchemical, this is sulfuric, hydrochloric acid and all the elements that go with it. Back to Basil Valentine, so when you azoth and Rebis, I'm sorry, but McKenna's are just so way off, it's like, yeah, okay, it's just, what can, you can't, okay, like him or not, maybe you do, but the fact is, when he talks about Hermeticism and alchemy, he's so way off that it's a different universe, not just a different galaxy, it's a different universe we're talking about these things. And this is written down, this is measurable, it's testable, you can cross-reference all these different documents, look at the people involved, and it just is. Anyway, hydrochloric acid, alchemical secrets. And so, okay, this is Basil Valentine, 12 keys. This is Basil Valentine, azoth of the philosophers. Now, the two flowers being separated by Mercury, the symbol there. Two flowers being separated by the divine hermaphrodite, Mercury. The sun and the moon, silver and gold, being held by this figure. And this is from the Crowning of Nature. It's a anonymous document, but separatio. And this shows in the flask, it's a textbook, it's an alchemical textbook. And again, we're seeing separation. Now that would also bring us back to Heinrich Kunrath, azoth, Mercury, okay, the divine wedding, the alchemical wedding of sun, gold and silver, moon. And we also have Rebis being split by Mercury, so separation once more. Just like Mercury is separating the Rebis here, just like it is separating it here, and we also see in these later descriptions, it's pointing to recipes, alchemy in that sense, the sun and the moon. The same theme, all these guys, the actual Hermeticists and Alchemists left us all these traces, and well, there it is. And okay, so with that one, I hope you enjoyed. But again, I'll put these links to the works in it. Okay, well, I've got a minute and a little bit left. Let's bring up the secret. So this was the secret symbols of the Rosicrucians, 1785. And now if you look through, there's this Germanic script here, but you will find every once in a while they'll drop back to the Latin script, and they're dropping nice little, now you'll see Valentinus referenced in there, Hermes Trismegistus, Paracelsus. This link will be in the description, and if I can spot it, will just scan through. You can get the translation of this one as well. It's Secret Symbols of Rosicrucians. Just Google that one for yourself. And always when you're looking at so we're looking for these references. Okay, now not quite there, but what we have is a change in the script. Okay, so notice, okay, for instance there, it's changed now to the script. Now what you will find is, if you go through this one, you will see like Hermes, Valentinus, Corpus Spiritus Animus, and all these features, and they stand out because they're in a bold font and they're in a Latin script rather than the... Anyway, have a good one. All links in the description. Cheers.